You got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me. Hurt my feelings.
Welcome back to another episode of Dynasty Theory here at DD Fantasy Football. Make sure you hit that like button on the video below and in the episode description. Use code Theory. Get all the perks over at DD Fantasy Football. Get in the Discord. A lot of good stuff going on. What's going on, Mitch?
What's going on, dude? Another week in the books. Decent in Dynasty again. I'm feeling really good about this season, so I hope it just doesn't blow up in the playoffs like it did last year.
Yeah, get a lot of 109s, 110s, and it's going to be, that's the worst. That is the worst. Oh, man. Well, speaking of the worst, this is an easy segue here. Daniel Jones was benched.
Yep.
The Giants have their bye week in week 11. They are 2-8, and we get the news earlier today that Daniel Jones is not going to be the starting quarterback of the New York Giants moving forward. What are your thoughts overall?
See it coming. I think it's something that we all saw once we knew there was that injury guarantee that could have locked him in for next year if anything happened. The Giants were so scared about the quarterback situation that they won't even start Drew Lock because he also has like a playing time guarantee. So like, no, neither of you two are playing. I wouldn't be shocked if I know they said Daniel Jones is going to stay in the building. Not going to be shocked if that changes in 2 weeks. I mean, really, if I was him, I would understand because they're not going to play you. Like, even if Tommy out there gets hurt, they probably aren't going to play either one of those guys. They'll bring someone else in off the street.
Yeah, I think it would be like a Drew Lock steps in mid-game.
Yeah.
And then they find, I don't know, Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah. Whoever
probably even somebody lower. But like for fantasy purposes, I don't know that there's all that much to take away here because Daniel Jones, luckily for fantasy managers, all of the targets were being funneled to Malik Nabers and Wan'Dale Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with Tommy DeVito coming in, you would like to think that maybe he pushes the ball down the field a little bit more. He just kind of has his foot to the pedal there. You know, you look at Daniel Jones, 63% completion percentage. His touchdown rate was 34th among quarterbacks this year, middle of the pack in interception rate. But whenever you look at his intended air yards per attempt, 7.2, he's not driving the ball down the field. Everything underneath, 6.1 yards per attempt. That's 33rd across the NFL. And remember, there's only 32 teams in the NFL. And this dude, as what was supposed to be a franchise quarterback, duping them after one solid season, he gets the extension. And now here we are. It's coming to fruition. Daniel Jones just completely, hitting the bench and probably in some leagues, maybe hitting the waiver wires across your dynasty leagues. Do you think we're going to see people trying to buy low? Like, oh, I'll send a third for Daniel Jones. We're going to see it.
Yeah, I do think people do it. I don't think you should. So to me, Daniel Jones isn't a Sam Darnold, isn't a Baker Mayfield. We have never seen Daniel Jones be really good. So John, I have a couple stats for you. We're going to play a guessing game real quick.
All right. I like it.
2020. So we've had the last 4 seasons. How many 300-yard passing games does Daniel Jones have?
Since 2020?
Yep.
1.
He has 4. A little bit more than what I thought. Now, How many 3 touchdown passing games has he had in that amount of time?
I know the first game that he came in relief of Eli Manning.
So this is in 2020. So there's going back to, he was there in 2019.
Okay. So
2020.
Okay. 2.
0. Doesn't have 1 3 touchdown passing game in 4 years. I mean, this isn't, to me, it's not a buy low because even if he gets a chance, this isn't a guy that I want in my lineup. We have seen this all season long to where you kind of played him because you might have felt like you had to in a certain league. But he's not a guy to where I believe can ever be a Sam Darnold who can really rise in value. Can he be worth a late second someday to somebody? Sure. Do I really care to hold that on my roster for the next 2 years and hope he gets a starting chance week 12 of next year? it's just not something I'm looking to do.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because we look at Malik Nabers now, 94 targets through 8 games. A lot of the targets being concentrated to those 2 targets, and Malik Nabers and Robinson, like I mentioned. Average depth of target, 10 yards. So maybe that improves a little bit more. Maybe the volume picks up a little bit, but the dude's still getting 13 targets a game. It's not like he wasn't getting the opportunity. So it's going to be very interesting. If Tommy DeVito comes in, and I always want to call him Danny, I always want to call him Danny DeVito, but if Tommy DeVito comes in and we see a dip, like right now, based on who he's going over on the trade market, you look at Fantasy Calc, you can look at KTC, whatever. I think Malik Nabers is slightly overvalued, but we might get the opportunity here. Like I can't take him at wide receiver 3.
Right. No, that's too high anyways. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not saying like he's in red on my sheets, which again, dynasty tiers, cross positional. I have the rookie picks incorporated, tight end premium included, seeing who's a buy, who's a sell based on current market values. That's on DD Fantasy Football as well. So if you use the code, get 50% off your first month, and you could check it out. And I have a feeling you're going to enjoy it. But like I have him in red, but that's good. I think that's going to change very quickly here, unless he just gets like a 50% target share.
So here's my one issue with that. Just only issue is I don't think DeVito is a worse quarterback than Daniel Jones as far as what's going to happen on the field. I think there's a decent chance that offense can improve a little bit because I just don't think Daniel Jones is that kind of quarterback. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe DeVito's worse. It's hard for this offense to be worse. I think Nabers can at least maintain what his current targets are and probably what he's been doing weekly. So for me, I don't like him as wide receiver 3. You have him as wide receiver 6, in that tier. I completely agree with that because I'm not taking Nabers over St. Brown. I'm not taking him over Nico. I'm not taking him over CeeDee Lamb. So,
and ultimately when it comes down to it, we're splitting hairs at that point.
Yeah.
Like it could take one really lopsided trade to shift that fantasy calc value. So this move at quarterback, really, ultimately, the big takeaway, it's not going to impact where I have Malik Nabers. I have him at Dynasty wide receiver 6. He's staying there. Wan'Dale Robinson, he's a lower tier receiving option as is. When he gets the volume, he could have some surprising weeks. But outside of those two, I just don't see a big change in the way this offense operates.
I just hope Theo Johnson gets a few targets. It's my hope. The only thing I'm really hoping is I could get some more Theo Johnson because he's looked pretty good the last few weeks.
Yeah, Theo Johnson.
Hope that it continues a little bit.
And it is going to be interesting to see because we have the Russian quarterback leaving the lineup, how it's going to impact the target share distribution whenever you look at the different positions. Like typically when you have a Russian quarterback, you don't get all that many targets to the running back position. And through 10 games right now, we have Tyrone Tracy with 23 targets, Devin Singletary with 16. So we're looking at 39 right there. Out of 325, so like 14% target share maybe. And typically when you look across the NFL, it's 20% to running backs, 20% to tight ends, 60% to wide receivers. Just a general ballpark idea. So I'm hoping DeVito might incorporate Tyrone Tracy a little bit more. And obviously those stats are a little bit skewed because Tracy really wasn't involved at all to begin the season. And now he's starting to get a little bit more work. So that, it's going to be interesting, but it's always fun to see how an offense is impacted whenever you have a change at quarterback, especially a change and getting rid of such an elite quarterback like Daniel Jones.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, dude, that's another franchise to where you think at some point they'll fix it, but maybe they just don't.
So do they go rookie quarterback? Because you can't see this season turning around at all. And Shador Sanders or Cam Ward. I think it's one or the other.
Yeah. My thing is they made this mistake, and taking Malik Nabers isn't a mistake. So let me put that out there, right? But they talked themselves into Malik Nabers because they just gave out a bad contract, right? They're like, hey, it's a bad contract. We have to play Daniel Jones. I mean, how would they be feeling right now if they had Drake May in there? Maybe the offense is terrible because there's no one for him to pass to. But at least there's something there, right?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of look at what Denver did, and I'm not I think Sean Payton, he's a good coach.
Yeah, he's all right. He's decent.
Despite the fact that, what he did to my man Russ was just disrespectful. But I'll get over it maybe one day. I will forgive, but I will certainly not forget. But you look at what happened there. They pulled the plug on Russ last year. They draft a quarterback that a lot of people were kind of scoffing at to start the season. And I was probably in that category, like, oh my God, look how this isn't looking good. And then over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, Bo Nix looks like a rookie of the year candidate. And it's like, okay, the Broncos did something here. Maybe that's the direction the Giants could go. Maybe.
That's the hope, right? That's the hope.
So we'll see how that goes. Not to spend any more time on Daniel Jones.
We're done.
A much more exciting player here. So last week, we did our quarterback tiers, our Dynasty quarterback tier show. And in passing, in the Dak Prescott tier, I got a little heated about the fact that Anthony Richardson was even in that tier. Now, in my defense, when that episode was recorded, Anthony Richardson was not named the starter again. Joe Flacco at that point in time was still the starter. And now we see a monster game in week 11 from Anthony Richardson. And Mitch, really quick, not to get sidetracked, but last week and throughout the whole week, we were like, oh, we're going to do a Dynasty tier show on running backs.
Yes.
Right. And we're sitting there this morning, we're messaging each other. And this is what happens behind the scenes on Dynasty Theory. But we're talking about like all these players that are worth discussing. And I was like, well, yeah, let's go that direction instead of the running back tiers, which Mitch, you were like, let's not do that. I was like, I completely agree. If you're contending, get the veteran running backs that are producing, that are on non-contending teams, and you can get at a reasonable price. If you're not contending, look to ship off those running backs to the contenders. Boom. That's the episode right there.
Look, there isn't a lot of nuanced takes when it comes to running backs in Dynasty. No. It's get the young ones that are really good, trade for the vets that are going to score points, and avoid the Zamir White type landmines that are there every single year. I mean, that's really what it is. So at this point, it's like, hey, go and get Joe Mixon. He's still pretty good. That's like the running back tier show at this point in the season.
And like we said, look at the players at the bottom of the standings. The managers that maybe they have them lurking. But anyway, so very exciting to talk about Anthony Richardson in the voice channel over at DD Fantasy Discord. Anthony Richardson was quite the topic of discussion, and we had somebody in there that was looking to acquire Anthony Richardson, and I had to take myself off of mute during the voice channel. And I got a little riled up because, yes, Anthony Richardson, we know the ceiling whenever he puts it all together. And we saw that in week 1 this year. But there were so many times that if he was rushing, ultimately he was leaving a game early. We were seeing a 50% completion percentage. He wasn't giving you the ceiling. So why are we taking such a risk to acquire him? So for the season, and this even includes week 11, Mitch, 48.5% completion percentage, 48. That's 36 across the NFL. Low touchdown rate, 29th. High interception rate, tied for 34th. 7.5 yards per attempt, 12.4 intended air yards per attempt, 39 rushing yards per game. So those are kind of the positives there because he's taking those shots down the field. Now you look at week 11, 67% completion percentage. You have the touchdown rate, pretty much the same, 3.3%. No picks. He did have the fumble. 9.1 yards per attempt. So that's elevated. All right. But it's the intended air yards per attempt. It came down almost 2 full yards when you compare it to the entire season. So what did you see from Anthony Richardson here before we get into more of a fantasy aspect of it?
Dude, I liked what I saw. And this was my issue with them benching him in the first place. He's 22 years old. This kid, like, I hate calling him kid, but this guy needs to go out there. He needs to be on the field, and he needs these reps in order to perform. I think he needs reps more than just about any other quarterback out there, because him sitting on the bench with his play style, that's not going to show him anything. What is going to prove to him is being out there on the field, learning like this. And I am willing to buy him, right? I do like the idea of buying into this risky asset. But let me tell you, here is the issue, okay? They just played the Jets. We kind of know that defense has fallen off the map. We talked about it on Winning the Week, about how the Colts could do pretty well this week. Let me tell you what
in every start-sit discussion, every question that popped up on Sunday morning, we said if Anthony Richardson was involved, we loved him as an upside play.
Yeah. So let me tell you the next 4 weeks. You tell me how this is going to go. The Colts get the Lions defense. The Colts get the Patriots defense. The Colts get the Broncos defense. Then the Colts get to play the Titans. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I love what he's done. I don't think this is the point to where you buy him. I think you let that uptake happen a little while. Give it 3 more weeks. And because he actually has a pretty decent, he has a decent game the end of the year to where he gets, the Giants. And then Jaguars doesn't matter because this last game of the season, we don't care about that. But it's just the next 4 weeks are going to be extremely tough. If we love looking at playoff schedules for players that we like, we have to be willing to also say, you know what, this playoff schedule could be hell for a guy like Anthony Richardson. But if I'm on a non-contending team, I love someone being like, oh, hey, I'm going to sell high right here. I love going out and getting him on a team like that. Somewhere to where let him get his starts, let him get these 6 games in, and then let me roll with him into next season, knowing that he has 2 full seasons and hopefully an injury-free off season to build on in the Colts training room. So for me, I still like buying him, but on a contender, I am extremely hesitant because I don't know how good of a weekly starter he's going to be, even though he does provide you with that rushing upside.
Yeah, I mean, it was the touchdowns in the rushing game that really gave the advantage. He wasn't giving you anything more, 32 rushing yards. It's not like he went out there and popped off 100 yards. And I don't want to sit here and say, I don't want to be one of those people that's like, he played the Jets. Let's hold, let's pause a little bit. I'm not here to piss in anybody's Cheerios, even though at times I think people feel that way. Okay. Or maybe rain on your parade. Is that a better saying?
Whatever you want. Whatever you want to do.
I usually try to find the toilet if I have to urinate, but sometimes it is in Cheerios. But you're like, will you shut up? So
wait to see where this is going. I lost track.
I don't who we talking about. I don't even know. So with Anthony Richardson, he gave us a tremendous game, and I have 4 shares across my Dynasty portfolio. I moved 1 share last week. The 4 shares that I still have, I was trying to move. I was adding a second to get Dak Prescott in depending on the situation and what the other team was looking for. I was trying to add a second to get to, I think Trevor Lawrence was an offer. There were a ton of offers. I was either packaging up, doing something cross-positionally. We offered Anthony Richardson for Devontae Smith.
We tried. Didn't work out.
And it was rejected. But sometimes, you always say, well, it's always the deals that don't get accepted. You look back on, you're like, okay, that panned out for me. But my point of saying all those offers that we sent out is we tried to sell at last week's prices. Mm-hmm. Now, if anybody's coming back, hey, I'm interested in that Devontae Smith deal. I'm interested in that Dak Prescott. And you had a second to Anthony Richardson. No, that ship has sailed now.
Yeah,
because we saw him come back in. We saw him produce. And We saw him play more in control than we have seen at any point in his very short career up to this point. Right. So I'm not saying I'm going out and acquiring necessarily. And we always talk about this, Mitch, whether it's on the field, off the field, whatever the reason is, you don't have to go out and trade for players. Like if you just want, if you want to avoid a player or a situation, nobody's putting a gun to your head saying, Mitch, you better go acquire Anthony Richardson or else. Like you don't have to make an offer. And I know everybody wants to go out and say, oh, I made that great trade and I was able to buy low. But we don't know if this is a buy low situation. We don't know if it's a buy high situation. It's a very unique situation that I think, the folks that love Anthony Richardson don't weigh the risk enough. Those that dislike Anthony Richardson don't give him enough credit for the upside. And even if we do see any improvements. So ultimately, I don't know that we see all that many deals get done.
I think the way that you do it is if you're on a rebuilding team and you're willing to get him, you're going to have to give up one of the veterans that's valued a little bit higher right now. You're going to have to do a Jared Goff, trade him straight up to a contender and take their Anthony Richardson.
But see, here's my thing, though. After what we just saw against the Jets, in people's heads, hey, the Jets defense, it's still a strong defense, even though we talked about when Robert Saleh left, that defense is just deteriorated. But people, they might not necessarily be looking at it like that. So even if you are contending, hey, Richardson just popped off 30-some points. I know Goff had a
So are you saying that Richardson's unattainable right now?
I think if you have him in a league and you actively tried to move him last week and didn't, I don't know that people are going to be willing to pay the price that you need at this point.
No, that's why I'm saying I'm willing to get him. I'm willing to trade.
But what are you willing to pay? Like
I just said I'm willing to give up a Jared Goff for him. Someone who just
I don't think it gets done.
I would trade Baker Mayfield for him on a rebuilding team. And I know you wouldn't do that.
I wouldn't do it. I would take Baker.
I would be willing to do that, though. On a rebuilding team, I want that guy that can give me huge upside. I'd be willing to do it. I think it happens. I actually think the Jared Goff thing happens more often than not, too.
Okay. My thought is, if you compare the number of Anthony Richardson trades, and I'm going to look at this, I'm going to track it on Dynasty Daddy. Jeremy does a great job there with the trade database, obviously. And I'm going to have the same parameters last week versus this week. And I think we're going to see a significantly more amount of Anthony Richardson trades last week. Because again, why didn't you go out and acquire Anthony Richardson last week then?
Because my teams are more of a rebuild than they were last week.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I just didn't know they were in that full rebuild. Now I do. Now I'm like, getting off one of these aging guys for an up and coming star is just the thing that you do, right?
But like you just said about this upcoming schedule, why not try to wait a week or two?
Because sometimes with these, what if he does well? What if you kind of miss the bottom point? We talked about this with Justin Herbert. We bring this up constantly, but earlier in the season, we all were go out and get him because this is the cheapest he's ever going to be. Maybe Anthony Richardson is a little bit cheaper in 3 weeks because he goes through a tough 3-game stretch. Maybe he doesn't, though. Maybe this is his bottom point. Are you really going to worry about, he's going to be worth, let's say, maybe like a late 25-second less here in 3 weeks after these rough games? To me, it's just not worth it. Like, that's a risk that I'm willing to take.
No, it's always interesting to see that dynamic. And it's like, just go acquire the price today or acquire at the price that maybe you think it's going to be at. But ultimately, like right now on Fantasy Calc, as we record this, he is trading at quarterback 17, 47th overall in Superflex formats. If he pops off 2 more games, he's all of a sudden a top 20 asset again.
Yeah.
And that is within the range of outcomes. Now, like I don't know if you saw the one rushing touchdown he had where he absolutely trucked the defender.
Yes.
Like I was like cringing. I'm like, Is he getting up?
Do it.
But like that's his game, and that's the way he plays. Can his body continue to take these hits? So like we're gonna get into some trades here, and I apologize because I was so fancy last week with putting the trades up on the screen. Unfortunately, I just did not have time to do it today, and I wait until the day we record to pull the trades because I want the most recent up-to-date available trades to discuss. But we have a lot of Anthony Richardson trades, so hopefully bear with us. You can keep up, and I can slow down a little bit because God knows once I start rambling, there's no stopping this train. But I put this into 5 buckets. You know I love my buckets.
There's a lot of buckets here. I hope everyone's ready for the amount of buckets.
We're going to package up. We're going to do something cross-positionally. We're going to move some picks. We're going to tear down. And then we're looking at a 1-for-1 quarterback swap. So as you're listening to this, as you're thinking about these trades, think about what you see as like the biggest advantage. What is the biggest market inefficiency if you're trying to go out and acquire Anthony Richardson and you see the way this is? Okay, maybe I need to move that higher end quarterback, but I can get a nice package. Maybe I can move something cross positionally. Maybe I can move picks. Whatever you see as the path of least resistance, I think that's the way that you want to approach this. Now, again, if you don't like Anthony Richardson and you don't have him on your dynasty roster, then it doesn't matter. You're not going to acquire him. Like I know, like we talk about portfolio all the time. You are in a ton of leagues. I am in a ton of leagues. So, okay, maybe if I can acquire Anthony Richardson at $1 here and sell him at $1.25 there, overall, my portfolio, I'm making a profit, right? But most dynasty managers might be in 1 to 3 leagues.
Yeah.
So they don't care about portfolio.
I don't care about portfolio, to be honest with you.
No. And I get that. But like but I think to an extent you do, even though it's not as concrete. Like if there's a player that you're interested in, the market shifting so quickly, you're telling me that you're not going to go try to buy some and try to move some at the same time?
Literally, no.
Really?
No. My whole thing on portfolio, this is how I look at it. If there's a player I really like, I want to be overweight. So let's say I really like Anthony Richardson, right? I want to go out. I don't want him. If I have 50 leagues, I don't want him on 10. I don't want him on 15. If I truly believe on him, I want him over 20. Because if I'm right, then he hits. If I'm wrong, I could still move these assets. That's always my thing when it comes down to portfolio stuff. I could be overweight, and if it's not working out, I can always get rid of it. That's the great thing about it.
You just described me, overweight and not working out. That's me in a nutshell. All right, so Mitch, let's put you to the test here.
Okay, yeah, let's keep going.
So we're going to package up Anthony Richardson and 225 firsts for Josh Allen, but it's a 10-team super flex start 10.
Josh Allen.
Okay. Anthony Richardson and 225 firsts for Jalen Hurts and a 27 first, 10-team super flex start 12.
Yeah, that Josh Allen one was an absolute smash for me. This one, it's a smash for me on the other side. I mean, I'm getting Richardson and 2 firsts. I'm more than happy to do that for Hurts. And that 27 is just too far in the future for me to really care.
Okay.
You agree so far?
I'm not saying I disagree. This is like my hedging episode. I'm due for one.
That's good. We're only 30 minutes in. We can make this go for 2 hours. I like it.
Oh, this is an all-night extravaganza. No, I would take Josh Allen. 10-team start 10. Yes, you're getting the first. Like, it would depend. No, I don't even know if it would depend where those firsts are.
No.
Like,
Josh Allen's untouchable for me right now.
Anthony Richardson and a 25 first for Patrick Mahomes. 12-team start 8 PPR.
12-team start 8. That's something. And it's super flex. No, you didn't list super flex.
No, they're all super flex.
Okay, sorry, it wasn't in the note.
I know.
God, I hate that I even hesitated on Mahomes. I'm going to take Mahomes, but like I hate that I'm hesitating on Mahomes as much as I do.
See, I made you acquire him on a co-managed
God, I
league
hate
a little
that
over a month
trade
ago.
more and more every single day. We'd be playoff bound. We'd be great, but no. We could have Patrick Mahomes sit on our bench. It's awesome.
Who needs championships when you can tank for 10 years and have Patrick Mahomes? Okay. And then Anthony Richardson, Caleb Williams, and a 26 first for Lamar Jackson. A little more traditional 12-team super flex start 10.
Yeah, this one, I want Lamar to be untouchable like Josh was, but I think that Caleb Williams just kind of slats a little bit. I'm going to go Caleb, the 26 first, and Anthony Richardson. I think there's enough outs there for Lamar.
Because ultimately, you could say Caleb Williams is worth the 225 first, give or take, depending on where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're getting another 26 first on top of it.
Right.
I can see that. It would need to be, but again, like you said, like from a production standpoint, you might not be missing anything rest of season. You could. That's I can absolutely tank. So again, I always challenge our listeners each and every week. I want to know on which of these Anthony Richardson trades, as we're going through it, are you like, okay, I'm interested in Anthony Richardson there, because I think this is a fascinating conversation, because like we kind of saw it with Justin Fields, but he was giving you production each and every week for fantasy purposes when he was in Chicago. Like we knew he was on his way out, but he was giving you production. Now, if we get that from Anthony Richardson and ultimately he's not on his way out, like I'm not suggesting Anthony Richardson isn't going to start in Indianapolis. So let's not get it twisted. But it's an interesting dynamic to see a player get benched for a veteran and then come back and flourish. Maybe Anthony Richardson can break that mold. All right, cross positionally, Anthony Richardson for Brandon Ayuk, 10-team Superflex start 9 PPR. Mitch
Richardson.
Yeah, that one was quite easy for me. From a pick perspective, like I have Ayuk right at that kind of early 25 second. I have tried not to be stubborn. I know that's tough for you, Mitch, but I have been moving Anthony Richardson up a little bit more from where I had him. Still in red. I can't quite get like.
Is he over Dak? That's what I care about here.
I have him in the same tier, but again, I have him in the same tier. But I think that should show you with how angry I got about that last week. Like, I'm not going to sit here and double down on something whenever we have new information now.
That's good.
Because I'm
proud of you.
Thank you. You're like, no, I will double and triple and quadruple down.
Yes, I will, without a doubt.
All right, next one, Anthony Richardson in a 25 second and a 26 second for Joe Mixon and Jaden Reed, 10-team Superflex start 10 PPR.
Yeah, as Jaden Reed's biggest fan, I'm taking Anthony Richardson here. Joe Mixon, who knows what you're going to get after this season, and Reed's awesome, but I'm getting the quarterback with a couple picks on top of it.
Okay. And the 10-team doesn't impact, like, to go the positional route?
No.
Does your quarterback situation impact it?
Not really, because I believe Anthony Richardson can be a top 10 fantasy quarterback year in and year out. You just might have to wait a little bit more, longer than what we wanted, right? I'm thinking we all bought in maybe 1 year too early on it.
All right. And then Anthony Richardson or Jonathan Taylor, 12-team Superflex start 8 PPR.
Start 8 is the tripping point here, because that makes Jonathan Taylor like really interesting, because he still had 25 touches this past week. Start 8, I'm probably going to go Jonathan Taylor.
Okay. I don't disagree there. I don't disagree. And now we get into the picks. Anthony Richardson. These are, again, just to show you the market. Anthony Richardson for a 26 first, 12-team Superflex start 10 PPR.
Richardson.
Same settings, 25 first.
Richardson.
Is it that magical 106 spot? Is that the flipping point?
No, it's probably 105, to be honest. because I think I'll take him probably over the quarterback one that's coming up, whoever it ends up being. As of right now, give me time, that could change. But right now, I'll take Richardson.
Okay. And I think in a lot of leagues, when we get into rookie drafts, because of the market, because of positional need, we're going to see Sanders and Ward go top 5 in a lot of drafts.
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
It's just going to happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of really bad quarterback rooms in dynasty leagues, and I have a few of those, to be honest with you.
I did, but Russell Wilson, I'm good for maybe the next
everything.
I'm good for the next 20 years, maybe.
Excited for him to start for the Panthers next year.
Oh, don't you say that. All right. So that's the trades that have happened for pick. 25 first and a 25 second, same settings. Or Anthony Richardson. Okay, that second's not swinging it for you. And then that first needs to be around 105 for you to maybe be interested. All right. So here's some tier down trades. Tearing down from Anthony Richardson. Bryce Young and a 25 first or Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, Bryce Young ain't changing nothing for me. Anthony Richardson.
What quarterback does that need to be?
Why do you do this to me?
Sam Darnold?
No, because I think he's not really worth a lot upcoming.
Stafford?
It would have to go up to the staff. You have a tier of Geno, who's way too low, Penix, and Matthew Stafford. That one of those guys would be more than happy to do it.
Way too low. Like, I love Geno.
Do you though? With that ranking, it sure doesn't seem that way.
Maybe I just hold my quarterbacks to a higher standard. I don't know. As I talk about all my rush shares. Okay, so that's a quarterback and a 25 first if we're tearing down. And then Anthony Richardson for Kirk Cousins, Keenan Allen, and Rashad Bateman, 12-team Superflex, start 11 PPR.
Richardson.
See, this one was really tough for me because I love Kirk Cousins.
You do.
I am above market on Kirk Cousins. So because of that, like Keenan Allen and Rashad Bateman, they're not closing that market gap for me. I think I'd be leaving something on the table there. I think that's my thing.
Yep.
So as we always talk about, like finding market inefficiencies, because I have Anthony Richardson in red, I am lower than market. So adjusting for the market, I think you could get Kirk Cousins plus a solid piece, and that's not Keenan Allen, and that's not Rashad Bateman. Like you could probably get Cooper Kupp.
Oh, I think so.
Like in that tier, Deebo Samuel maybe, somewhere around there. I maybe makes it a little more interesting, but I just think like you got to play the market too, and you're leaving something on the table there, despite my love for Cousins and being a little anti Anthony Richardson. All right, Mitch, 1-for-1 quarterback swap. This one was very interesting. It happened since the games.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Anthony Richardson for Bo Nix, 12-team Superflex, start 11.
Bo Nix hammer. Bo Nix is an absolute stud. Like, I hope Anthony Richardson turns into a stud. Bo Nix is an absolute stud right now. Like, if you told me, portfolio-wise, I could have 70% rostership of him, I'm more than happy to get 70% rostership Bo Nix. Like, dude's playing lights out for a coach that I think everyone kind of has to believe in a little bit. I mean, he doesn't even have anyone to throw to. He has Cortland Sutton and Mims and Little Jordan Humphrey. I mean,
Troy Franklin's becoming more and more relevant.
Yeah, it's just wait till they get like legit pass catchers around this dude. I think the sky's the limit for Bo Nix. I love the kid.
Yeah, I could see. I think it would be interesting. Cortland Sutton, he's there through 25, right?
Mm-hmm.
But excuse me, pairing him with like T. Higgins, just two guys on the outside, and then
can you imagine?
And then get yourself a nice slot receiver. Yeah. I think let's get Hunter Renfrow in there. He's available.
Has been for a little while.
Yeah. All right. So now we have a few wide receivers we do want to talk about. Yep. Anything else on Anthony Richardson? Like you're saying basically pick a side. I'm saying it's okay to hedge a little bit. You can sell.
No, dude. In Dynasty, I've always said, if you don't care about this player, then don't have him on your roster. There is more than enough quarterbacks in the league to where if you're like, hey, let's say you don't like Tua because of his injury situation. It's fine. You don't have to have these players to win. The player you have to win this year is probably Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, right? If you have one of those two, you're going to be great. If you have someone else, who knows how well it's going to go in the playoffs.
I think the biggest thing here is like where an actionable takeaway needs to come into play is if you have Anthony Richardson on your roster. Because do you believe in him?
Yes, 100%.
Or were you looking to ship him off? That's where you have to take a stand.
Yeah, if someone comes up to you with the 106, it's not quite a playoff pick. It's right in the middle. This team can make the playoffs. They offer you their 25 first. This is your get out of jail free card on Anthony Richardson. Are you willing to accept it? Most leagues, I'm not. I'm willing to keep Anthony Richardson.
Yeah. So that's the big takeaway. 41 minutes in. If you have Anthony Richardson on your roster, pick a lane, make a decision. Do you want to ride it out or do you want to get out? Like Mitch said, this is your get out of jail free card. You have an opportunity to cash out, or do you ride it out? With my limited exposure, 4% rostership, probably going to ride it out, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't move Richardson at last week's price, like I said. So I doubt anybody's willing to pay this week's price. So we'll see how it plays out. I'll still shop around and we'll see how it goes. But now a few wide receivers we want to talk about. Is Jauan Jennings, is he the real deal?
Yeah, he seems to be honest. He really does.
We talk about the War Machine and the Trinity tool over there at ddfantasyfootball.com. And I want to plug a previous episode. I think it was 5 weeks ago, Mitch. We did an episode. I made a joke. I was like three men and a baby with you, me, and Dan, but it was four wide receivers and a quarterback. And we talked about, these are guys that we said to go buy on that episode. Go listen to it. Just skim through it. But we talked about Justin Herbert, T. Higgins, Josh Downs. Dan mentioned Roma Dunze, who since then has been coming on a little bit. And then the last one was Demario Douglas, who he's at his moments. But with T. Higgins and Josh Downs, we tried to preach the Trinity scores. And we tried to talk about it. That's over there at DD Fantasy Football. Hey, why were you guys so heavily invested in looking to acquire them? That's why. Jauan Jennings, his week 11 Trinity score ranked 5th, 8.86. And again, the Trinity score, it ties in the air yard share, yards after catch, and target share. I was watching the blurb here, the update from ESPN on what's going on in the game. So I apologize. But, and then you can look at yards per route run, that's included in there, but you get all this great information. So Jauan Jennings was 5th last week. That's how excited I am.
Yeah. Winnings. I like it.
Jauan Winnings. He number 3 in Trinity over the last 4 weeks. Over the last 4 weeks, he's wide receiver 6 with 20.7 PPR points per game. Like, I went from having him in red on the sheets to then going out. I got him for a 3rd and a 4th in a league last week because I scoured the teams that may have him that are at the bottom of the standings, finding somebody that just wants to get out, doesn't want to get more points. And I kind of got lucky there, but I think that's what you need to be doing. So like Jauan Jennings, you're saying he could be the real deal here, at least moving forward in 2024.
Dude, his catch rate's been awesome. I mean, he has multiple games at 90% catch rate with, 5 targets, 6 targets, 11 targets, another 11 targets. Like, the dude is just out there producing right now. And I want people that are kind of tied to Shanahan. I just think it makes sense. And I know Ayuk's going to be back next year, but you have another 6 games to ride this out. And Jennings isn't costing you an arm and a leg. You're not having to go out and pay wide receiver 2 prices for him. You're still able to go out because everyone knows in the back of their head, hey, he might be the wide receiver 3 on that team next year. Let's see what happens with Pearsall. But he is contracted with the 49ers next year. I think he's like a great trade candidate for him. But for me, I just love the dude. When you watch him on the field, he's electric. Like, I watched a lot of that game yesterday, and he looks really good. Debo is almost an afterthought when you watch what Jennings is doing as a wide receiver right now. We'll see what happens when Kittle comes back and he's fully healthy, but I honestly think that hurts Samuel more than it hurts Jennings, because I think Jennings and that extra is just going to be legit for the rest of the year. So I am more than willing to go out and get as much Jauan Jennings as I can on my contending teams.
But we've talked about this too. We talked about it last week a little bit. We talked about the most recent episodes of Winning the Week. Like, you have such an interesting wide receiver situation right now across the board. Chris Olave, IR. Like, Jalen Waddle not producing. Ayuk, out. Rashee Rice, out. Like, all these guys that maybe you were counting on and as a contender, and you're like, okay, I got to do something because my wide receiver rooms are just ravaged with injury right now. There are cheaper options. And, you know, a guy that we talked about several weeks ago, like I said, Josh Downs, well, he's no longer a cheaper option now because he continued to produce. You look at the data that's available, and he went out there and he's continued it, even with Joe Flacco, Anthony Richardson. It doesn't matter who's playing quarterback, but Jauan Jennings, and he's only 27 years old. It's not like he's a 32-year-old receiver. He's
not, but that's kind of how people treat him. He's the 30-year-old veteran guy that's come in that does pretty well when, you know, the number 1 wide receiver goes out. Nah, dude's young enough to keep doing this for a couple of years.
Now, I want to say, and I didn't even put this on our sheet, but there were several Jennings for a 3rd trade, even since yesterday.
Good for them. Good for them.
So, like, if the market is still there, or again, if you're in your league and you see that the team that has Jauan Jennings is at the bottom of the standings and you're mid to like a real contender, get offers out there, because I think you might be able to find a discount. So here's 3 trades I want.
Let me ask you a question on this.
Let me answer a question.
Why trade him for a 3rd? Let's say there's no well, let's say the only reason I could see is if you're trying to get points off your roster. Potential point league. Okay, I see it in that scenario. For me, why am I trading someone like Jauan Jennings for a 3rd? What am I possibly going to do with that 3rd all through next offseason before the draft that's going to be better than what I could probably do with Jauan Jennings at some point later this season?
No, I completely agree. And I'm very upset with myself. All these wide receiver injuries. I didn't mention Chris Godwin, my man. Yeah. I didn't mention Christian Kirk, my other man. I think I'm the only person in America that has a is it an 8x10 or whatever, or 10x12?
I think you're right. Yeah.
A signed picture of Christian Kirk. I don't know why I bought it. I've wasted a lot of money on things.
Sadly, not everybody knows that is right above your bed too. Like, you don't see it on the wall. Yeah. It's what you see when you go to bed each night.
And actually, I thought up until this last week, the biggest waste of money is that signed Anthony Richardson helmet right there. Yes, I have that signed Anthony Richardson helmet. I really just thought I love the blue. I thought it looked really cool.
Looks cool. I agree.
Spent a little bit of money on it. I was like, wow, should have just got a Joe Flacco one for a fraction of the price. But anyway, I digress. Jauan Jennings for a 25-second, 12-team Superflex start 9 PPR.
Yeah, I'll take Jennings there.
And again, it's assumed later.
Yes, of course.
You're contending.
Yes.
Jennings for Christian Kirk.
I think this is a smart trade. I'm okay giving up my Kirk for Jennings, because I do think he's that much of a every week starter for you moving forward this year.
Yeah. Again, if you're in a bind, if you have been looking for cheaper production at the wide receiver position, we talk about a get out of jail free card with Anthony Richardson. This is kind of that get out of jail free card with finding a producer at the wide receiver position that's not costing you an arm and a leg, but he's giving you that number 3 Trinity score over the past 4 weeks.
Yep.
Jennings and Shakir for Brandon Ayuk, 12-team Superflex start 10 PPR.
There was a time to where I'd hammer Ayuk. And this isn't, please, no one think that this is just a hot take because Jennings has been doing good. It's because I really believe in Shakir too. I mean, not take it out, but guess who we're talking about next? Khalil Shakir. But
I had this question third, or this trade third. Go right into it.
Because I think Khalil Shakir is just, he is that great slot wide receiver in the league right now that is tied to Josh Allen. Like, Amari Cooper is great, but I don't think Amari Cooper is ever going to be a big target hog in that offense. I don't think Keon Coleman is built to be a target hog. I definitely don't think Dalton Kincaid is built to be one. Can Khalil Shakir average 7 to 9 targets for the rest of the year? Absolutely. So for me, it's, hey, I'm getting 2 starters that I could trust for this year. And yes, Ayuk will probably have a higher value going into next year. Dude's injured though, right? And you brought this up on how much of the 2023 season was such an outlier for him. It kind of leads me into like Shakir isn't going to have great value going into next season. That's just kind of how this goes. But I could have Shakir to kind of balance that out and have 2 great producers for the rest of the season. I'm all about it.
Yep. Adding that 24-year-old receiver tied to Josh Allen through at least 2025. Khalil Shakir, excuse me, wide receiver 23 over the last 4 weeks at 14.4 points per game. I'm not saying that keeps up.
Yeah.
But is it realistic to think 12 to 13 PPR points and really, pairing him with Jauan Jennings in that specific trade? Are you really going to be losing out on all that much ultimately when it's said and done? I don't think so.
Yeah, throwing Shakir in your flex each week, that's a great play. That's not, I don't care what the matchup is. I don't care who they're playing. That's someone you could walk in every single week knowing, hey, that's my flex. I'm good with that. And those are lineup decisions that I love.
So let's go through a few Khalil Shakir trades now as another guy that has been producing that we are going to be looking to acquire. And I always try to go out and make some acquisitions Tuesday morning and Tuesday afternoon before the episode drops. So we'll see how that goes.
That's what I do too.
We'll see how that goes after our conversation. Khalil Shakir for Will Levis, 12-team Superflex start 8 PPR.
Someone DM'd me about what about they want to pick up Jameson Williams. And I was looking through that opposing team and I'm like, oh, they're like, if you can move your Will Levis for like a Jameson Williams, I would do it. If I can move my Will Levis for a Khalil Shakir, I'm doing it every second of the day.
Yeah, it's just Will Levis being one of those quarterbacks. Like, yeah, he looked okay this week, but meh.
Exactly.
It could be Daniel Jones all over again here in a year.
Oh, yeah.
Without the contract extension. Khalil Shakir and Tyler Lockett for Mike Evans, 12-team Superflex start 10, 0.5 PPR.
I know Mike Evans is going to come back this week, and I think he's going to produce really well because, Baker's a stud. The age discount with Shakir is pretty huge to me right now, so I'm going Shakir on that side.
I would have a very hard time, like, if I'm contending, moving my Mike Evans for Khalil Shakir and Tyler Lockett.
Mike Evans is 32, right? Am I wrong on that?
31.
31. Gonna turn 32 next offseason. Yeah, so that's a hard buy because is he going to really outproduce Shakir by that much, knowing the value drop going into next season?
I get it.
Yeah.
Now, if not contending, obviously you'd look to get a different piece other than Lockett.
You're probably not picking up Lockett.
But I like the framework there.
Yeah.
That would be a tough one for me. I would lean towards Evans.
Yeah, that's fair.
That is more pro Mike Evans than anti Khalil Shakir.
Yeah, I get it.
And then Shakir for a 27-second 12-team Superflex start 11.
Theft. So 25-second without looking at your tiers, you probably already know because you remember these things. Where would you have Khalil Shakir if someone offered you the 25 203.
I have Shakir right around like 204, 205, 206.
So you'd accept the 203 then?
If I knew it was a locked and loaded 203, I think I would take that.
Yeah. Okay.
But again, like a 27 second.
Yeah.
I mean, I know everybody thinks that they can guess where those picks are going to be,
Yeah.
but that's
we
not.
know exactly 6 weeks,
Yeah.
With 6 weeks left.
All right. This last player, and I
absolute stud. I believe you said
I was wrong.
Him a couple weeks ago on winning the week. It was something, just say no, something like that, if I remember right.
I may or may not have said JSN stands for just say no. and he heard that. I motivated him.
Good for you.
He said, will this unathletic dude with a microphone shut the hell up? Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I'm sorry. I apologize. Over the last 4 weeks, he has the top Trinity score, 8.96. He is wide receiver 3 over the last 4 weeks with 23.9 PPR points per game. This dude, he's been a stud. Even
here's
with
the thing, those 4 weeks you talk about, that includes a week to where he got 9 yards receiving. So, I mean, no one think that we're cherry picking these stats to make these players look better. Because if we did, we would have went over the last 3 weeks to where like he would have been well above everybody.
I picked 4 weeks. I like to get a little bit more of a sample, but like looking at the trends.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think on previous episodes, I've done 3 weeks when looking at this, but I went with 4. But yeah, 4 weeks ago, he had 9 yards, so like, it's just the last 3 weeks, like even the 6 for 69 against Buffalo, like he's been impressive. And it's like, okay, the Ramsey popped off, but DK wasn't there. Yeah. But if they are able to continue to expand the way he is being used, and I think that, a lot of it comes from the new OC this year. And we saw what Shane Waldron did in Chicago this year. So instead of JSN meaning just say no, I don't know what's an acronym.
I was rooting for you there. I thought you would have a good one locked and loaded.
Just say now, as in just say now to trading for him. I don't know. Like here's the thing though. That market's going to be tough now.
Yeah,
that market is going to be very difficult. But I've moved him up significantly. And are we going to have some down weeks? Sure.
Mm-hmm.
But right now on Fantasy Calc, and this always takes a little bit of time to catch up because it's based on actual trades, DK Metcalf is wide receiver 13. JSN is wide receiver 19. In a week, I think that flips.
No, I agree. And the reason why we're bringing him up, we know his price is going to be a lot higher than what it was. But his Trinity score is amazing. And we both completely believe in the Trinity score. So when we see a guy performing like this that hasn't been performing that well previously in the season, we're going to make sure to bring him up so everyone has a good chance to go out there and get him. The Tyler Lockett for me is an absolute afterthought in this offense. A lot of smart people talked about it, and a lot of people just talked about this offseason. Hey, there's going to be a point to where JSN takes over. He just does. And, ended up happening probably week 8, week 9 of this year. I posted something on X back in August of an awesome JSN highlight in training camp. That might have been from 2022 or 23. That's fine. It still looked great. I don't care. That was a fantastic play. So, no, the biggest takeaway here is, like, even JSN at his market right now, I'm a huge Geno fan. I think Geno is a very, very good quarterback in the league. I think he's going to continue to be a good quarterback in the league for 3 to 4 more years. So if I could go out and get JSN even at an elevated price, I'm willing to do it.
And there are opportunities within the wide receiver landscape that I think you can make that happen.
Mhm.
And here's a few trades to kind of show that. JSN for Rashee Rice.
Yeah, I'm taking JSN.
Rashee Rice, he looked like a stud, but again, injured. What's he going to look like when he comes back next year? What is that situation going to be in Kansas City?
It's a situation like off the field too. Yeah.
Yep. Off the field. So that one for me, I'm taking JSN. JSN for a 25 first and Cortland Sutton, 12-team Superflex, start 8 PPR.
See, this one's hard for me because there's a lot of studs coming into the NFL, the wide receiver position in the 25 draft. I think Sutton's enough right now for me to take that 25 first and give me the production for the rest of the season with Sutton.
As I typically say, because I like to call myself out, and I was listening to an old episode.
Of course you were.
I was. And with JSN, there was a question, there was a trade scenario that came up, and it was a start 8. Mm-hmm. And I quote, I hope you do not have to start JSN in a start 8. Now, I always say I hide in plain sight. I like to get out ahead of it. So if this is a late 25 first, I'll take JSN.
Okay. No, a late one, I will do the same thing.
And then how about this one? So we talked about so many situations, those different buckets with Anthony Richardson, where you package up, you tier down. Here, we're going to package up. 12-team Superflex start 9, 0.5 PPR. JSN, a 25 first, a 26 first for Justin Jefferson.
Here's the thing. Jefferson has the value. Just does. I mean, Jefferson's worth more than JSN in 225 with 2 future picks and then the third on top of it, right? Jefferson's worth more. But it comes down to what can you do with that? If it's an active league, I feel like I could do a lot more with that 25 first, the 26 first, and JSN than what I can with Jefferson. Sometimes it's even hard to get people to offer deals for those upper elite fantasy assets because they're like, oh, they're kind of untouchable.
Right.
You tell me that's the 106, I'm assuming, let's just say mid 26 first as well, and JSN. I think I could do a lot with that with the upcoming draft. So I would probably go with JSN, and people are going to say I'm crazy. You take Jefferson there. I think the liquidity is pretty valuable there in Dynasty.
You know me. I love the liquidity.
You do.
I love it. I think I actually referenced O-Town in an episode a long time ago, their song Liquid Dreams.
I'm glad that you remembered that because I'm sure everybody else does as well.
Yeah. Nobody remembers what I said 3 minutes ago, let alone, I don't know, 2.5 years ago or whatever, but I am a psychopath. In this one, I would take Justin Jefferson. I completely understand the liquidity conversation with those picks. Start 9. That's what pushes me to Jefferson here.
I think it's
I think we're going to get the elite Justin Jefferson back to form, and he's just he's a piece in a start 9 that I want to build around.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never going to say one word about someone wanting to keep Justin Jefferson.
Yeah. I mean, like he's having a down year right now.
Yeah.
With only 912 yards through 10 weeks or whatever. And this is with Sam Darnold, who, I know Sam Darnold has kind of been a resurgence, a nice story this year, but that's going to come crashing down eventually. We've already seen it a little bit.
Give it 6 more weeks and wait for him to get in the playoffs. Yep.
Yeah, I know. So Anthony Richardson, well, Daniel Jones, we talked about him for a little bit. But then Anthony Richardson, pick your lane, especially if you have Anthony Richardson rostered. If you don't, and you don't feel comfortable, don't feel the need to go out and try to buy low just so you can say you did it, because there is a very wide range of outcomes, and we're trying to be very reasonable here, because you look at Anthony Richardson and he's one of those assets where you're going to get very strong takes one way or the other, and trying to give that nice middle ground. I know it can be boring at times, but I think we do have to be reasonable here, especially with a higher end asset like Anthony Richardson, and then go out and get Jauan, Jennings, and Khalil Shakir at a reasonable price and pay up. Don't just say no. Go out and see what you can do, and if you can get Jaxon Smith-Njigba. All right, Mitch, for the 269th time, final thoughts. What do you got for our Dynasty Theory DD fantasy football listeners?
I'm just going to say I've thought about this over the last few weeks in Dynasty. Is I think there's still a lot of edges that can be hammered out in specific leagues. Like if you really have your league settings down, there's a lot of edges you can get just by willing to tear down in places and be willing to attack a Jauan, Jennings, or Khalil Shakir to where their value isn't really as high as what producing and could be producing in future years as well. Just keep hammering it. Make sure you join up DD Fantasy so you're in the Discord so we could talk about it each and every day instead of just once a week on this show.
Yeah. And with like players like Jennings and Shakir, we talked about 1-for-1s, or we talked about packaging, other assets maybe, but you could package down from guys and get production, get liquidity, get additional assets that are going to help you along the way. And that's what makes Dynasty so fun. There's so many different ways that you can go about it and still find success. But like Mitch said, there are certainly edges still to be had. Hit that like button. We hope you enjoyed another episode of Dynasty Theory. For Mitch Sorensen, Dan Lamagna, who obviously you made an hour and 6 minutes in. If you didn't notice, Dan wasn't on the show yet. I don't tell you, but he's watching his Cowboys lose tonight. I'm John Bauer. We'll catch everybody next week. Best of luck in week 12, and we'll see you later. Peace.